Hey everybody, this is Dark Garza and we're back with another video featuring the tank game here. So I did show a short clip of this actual level, kind of going through it, just something I could get quickly uploaded while I was working through my editor queue. But I want to actually go in a little bit more detail what this level kind of is. I know there's a video showing us working on it, but it has actually changed a bit when it comes to kind of what it looks like and all the geometry and everything else. So when we were doing the original creation level, I haven't actually touched any of the other level parts, but we created a room, we created some portals, we got down and we created some kind of weird layout, and that was pretty much it. We had something we could go through, and then we just kind of talked about what we were going to do and everything else. I actually started coming through here and I actually started brushing it up and kind of making it something more presentable. We're still at the blockout stage, which for those who don't really know what the word blockout means, I know it probably wasn't clear in the clip video. I should have added a note of it as well. But blockout pretty much means creating a level kind of out of blocks. This is like the interpretation. It doesn't have to be blocks, but you're focusing purely on the geometry, what is going to be in the level, that you collide with, what you're going to kind of see in a broad way. It just gets you a way to get the level fleshed out. It's something you do before you put detail in there, before you put audio in there, before you put lighting in there, before you put actual assets and stuff in there that actually make the level look pretty and everything else. It's just to give you an idea of what's going to happen. That way you can sit there and go through that level and fill it out. Because having some pretty stuff in there can kind of make it crappy level look good and make it acceptable. But if you want some level that actually kind of feels good, then you want to actually go a little bit more, and then you want to do this kind of blockout stage, which is what we have basically here. So from last level, we still have our little teleportation position. So we go from here, you start from here, go to there, teleport, come down here, go through a long tunnel. So we still have the tunnel there. I actually have added walls now, so we're climbable walls. So we have the short tunnel. Then you'll come down into this first test area. So we have a respawn checkpoint creator here. So when you hit this point, it will actually set your spawn point here. We then have a task collection objective over here, which is what this little dot is. This actually is linked to these little dots here. So if you pick up these dots, it'll trigger logic, which will shut this thing off, remove this, and allow you to get to the next area. And then of course we have another checkpoint here, so because you can actually die in these parts, which will go to here, let you get through this point, and then go on, pretty much get through the rest of the level and actually get going with it. So it's not superly complicated, but it is more. It's something that we actually can look at and toy around with. So we actually have a respawn point system, which is really, really cool. I was really hesitant to work on this because I didn't really understand how I was going to make it happen. And then my brain went, you know what, let's do the simplest thing possible. How it physically works, and let me go ahead and pop out the code here a little bit, because I don't really care if you guys see the code, it's not special. So we have a player entity now. So previously we just had an entity object attached to the player, which was handling our HP and everything else. Now we actually have a player entity which handles our respawn point and actually handles how many respawns we have left. I'm not entirely sure we're going to leave this on the entity itself, because I actually realized after I created this that if we ever do decide to come back through here later and actually add more than one player to this, or add AIs or whatever, your respawn point is attached to the entity itself, and these respawn points are only designed to trigger once and then they turn off. So having more than one player kind of doesn't really work with the way the script is designed. But when it comes to single player, which is what we're aiming for right now, we actually ditch the concept of multiplayer for the moment until we can get something more feasible going. Then once we get everything going, then we'll think about what we're going to do with multiplayer. But yeah, so we got a respawn point when the player actually dies, which is actually triggered by the entity script. This is something we created in a previous video, which is actually in the parts here. So entity. So when we actually get, what happens when this entity is actually created, it actually does register on the damage data and on death event. And this will actually call this right here, which is originally designed to add points, but because it's a player, we don't really care about points, although we could theoretically add negative points, which I was toying with earlier, and I just pretty much, I'm not calling the super, and I could add it back. But that gets that, so this will actually go through when we get the death event. If we have no respawns left, game over, which we have not implemented. I don't know when I'm going to, but if we have respawns left, which we actually have infinite while we're in the tutorial levels, it'll go, hey, we have a respawn point, move the player to respawn, trigger an on respawn chunk, which is actually in the entity chunk system here, or entity class script, whatever you want to call it. Pretty much all this does is just reset the HP. In the future, this will do more things like reset your special abilities, reset cooldowns, reset aggro, because it'll try to remove aggro, is what it should in theory do. I'm probably going to have to code the AIs to recognize that the player actually did die. Theoretically, what we actually should be doing is creating a brand new tank instance on this point right here, because I mean, it's a player. You're only going to have so many instances of it, so creating a new instance isn't too big of a deal. AIs and bolts, we are going to want to recreate instances, but that's going to be a different thing we're going to do later. We'll have to figure out how we're going to do that, but yeah, so this should work. Some cleanup is definitely needed. So we get the respawn point there, it just pretty much sets at this little red dot, so when you die, you respawn back there. The blue dots are pretty straightforward. You collide with them, they basically go, hey, I've been collided with, they disable themselves, trigger an action, which then just tells this guy that, hey, an item's been picked up. Once we pick up enough items, this guy goes, hey, I want to trigger some actions. We actually can click this if I can get to it here. So move our object stack, it actually knows what items are going to be picked up. It then has an array of triggers it's going to trigger. So it's actually going to trigger the door over here, which is going to turn it off. And it's actually going to turn itself off so that way we're not updating scripts and everything else. And we actually have this cool little script which we can attach to things, which is trigger enable. This can actually be attached to any type of trigger system. So this is a highly recyclable script. A lot of the scripts I actually have made are recyclable. This thing's recyclable. The task pickup is recyclable. One of the things me and Grog were talking about doing is that if we actually end up killing a boss, we can make the player pick up a key. Although that key would be something like a frequency tuner, so it would look like probably like a little box. And you'll pick that up. And then as long as you have that picked up, walk over next to a door, the door opens. So we'll probably do stuff like that. We'll have to figure out what we're exactly doing with that. Even though we know what levels we're going to have, we don't actually know what's going to be in those levels just yet. But I think I've done enough talking here. So let's go ahead and go through the level, and then as we go through the level, I'll explain a little bit more of what's going on. So one thing we do have, as this is spawning, the tank is no longer in the level before the level starts. When the level actually does start, when we create the levels now, we actually have this little blue square here. This actually handles the tank spawning initially, sets our camera, sets our health to the GUI. So the GUI we actually have up here is actually triggered and set now. The plan for this later on, when we actually get some more work done, is that you'll be able to select your tank that you're going to spawn with. And then you'll spawn with that initial tank, and then of course the respawn menu will do something similar. You'll be able to select your tank again and be able to do everything else. Because the concept is we still want to do kind of the customization system where you can select tanks, you can select weapons on our tanks, but we're not going to do that out of game anymore. So the original idea was we were going to do that out of game. You would create pretty much spawn templates, and then you go through a level with that tank, and every time you died, you'd respawn the tank. And I decided, you know what? Let's reduce the complexity. Let's not make some kind of external scene that I have to manage and work with. Let's just do this all in game. Handle it all in game, where you can select all your weapons, you can select all your ammos, power ups. So that way, if you're in the middle of the level and you decide, you know what, this tank isn't working for me, you're not stuck playing through the whole level or restart the level. You can just flip out of your tank. This also will play into, if I ever get around to the future, you know, I should probably be driving while I'm doing this. Play around with the future when we'll probably implement a tonnage system where you'll have a limited number of tanks you can bring with you. And this will be like each tank will be worth so much weight, its parts will be so much weight, its spare parts, its repairs, all be worth so much weight, and it'll play into the fact that you'll have to think about when you're going through levels what equipment you want to take with you, what stuff you want to pick up, what stuff you want to sell or ditch. We might have a selling system and buying system where you can buy stuff. I haven't figured that one out, probably not going to fully do that. Anyway, so we get to this point, our spawn point should have been triggered. So we get down here. If we click this, this should tell me if we didn't have that text overlay. Yes, it has set the point, so this is no longer set, so now I've driven through it, it's no longer going to run again. Then our player tank, which is actually spawned down here, so let's get down here, should now have a spawn point, which should say respawn movement area 1, which is this little guy here. So our spawn point system does work, it actually does run properly. So we're in this actual level here, and we can actually even show that this is working. Let me go ahead and drive in here. So this actual toxic waste here is really, really cool. I've been trying to figure out a while how I was going to handle this. So if you actually go into the scene, you'll notice there's nothing in there that you can see. So my original thought when I was going to make these, I was just going to make little collision areas just like I did for the respawn point. I was just going to put them over here, and I got into that. I made about 3 of them, and I went, you know what? I am way too lazy for this, and I don't want to make any special inventive code for this. I don't want to go through long exact processes to make some kind of thing special. So I thought, you know what might work? Why don't we just take another tile grid, add a collision box to it, and then put our code on here. So now we have this little toxic waste here. This has a collision system just like the walls have. So if we actually click the walls have a collider. The difference is this is set to a trigger. and it has a very simple script on it. So we have the script on here that basically goes for every tick that the player is inside of here, and it actually does track it. So it goes, if you enter, exit, it just tracks a list of damage entities. And as long as you're a damage data system, so theoretically this will work on AIs. So if you push an AI into that toxic waste, he would take damage. Although I need to figure out a way to discourage AIs from passing through toxic waste. And you have to also think about this, that this might actually not be toxic waste in the future. This could be lava, this could be electrocution. It's environmental hazard is what this is meant to be. So this is a test level, training level. And what's going to happen is the little AI or little NPC that we actually have that's going to be guiding you through this level, which every time you hit a point, you're going to actually see a text pop up and go, and he'll say something. He'll say, hey, this room is a movement test system. We want to be able to test your ability to drive around and pick up objectives without running into environmental hazards. And he goes, for this test, we're going to simulate toxic waste. And I may randomize it in the future too, just to have fun. But he'll go like, hey, there's going to be tons of hazards out there in your journey or whatever, because you're what you are going to be in the campaign is either a newly recruited player or a new recruited soldier or a mercenary. I haven't figured out which one I like to do because we haven't got to the storytelling part yet, so we haven't figured out the dialogue. We know kind of where we want to go the story with, but we know that there's multiple different character types we can pick from that, and we're trying to still work that out of exactly where we want to handle that. I'm leaning towards the mercenary route because that lets me be more creative with the storyline because I don't have to be more strict with it. Because if I pick a soldier as the main character, then there's an expectation to be a little bit more strict because you're not going to have a soldier have free agency. He's not going to be able to make his own choices. He's going to have to follow orders, or I'm going to have to make him a character which directly disobeys orders, which would be weird. You're a brand newly created character, and it just sounds strange. I know there's definitely tons of stories that have gone around and done that. But we pick the mercenary. The mercenary makes more sense because then you could be like, hey, well, we're paying you to go do this mission, but what you do between that mission and the next mission and so on, we really don't care. So you could go and you can pick up your own people to help you out. You can get a wide range of tanks, equipment, you can buy things. So it actually comes in with a money system, makes a lot more sense if you're a mercenary because you'd be buying your own equipment. If we go with a soldier route, you're being supplied everything by the military, so then you would have to, instead of doing a money system, you'd have to go with something else. Anyways, getting sidetracked. So the script works pretty simple. Collect data, does damage. Really simple. I was really happy I got this working because this means we can do a lot of really cool things without having to do a lot of stuff. And I also did research on this. I could not find a tutorial that actually talked about doing anything like this. The ones I did find basically said, you know what you can do is create a game object spawner for your tile map. So this is something that they showed with doing side scrollers, is that you can create a tile and say I want to do these blue dots here. Instead of actually having this blue dot be an object that I put in the map, I could put a tile there that would then spawn that object when the map started. So I wouldn't have to do that myself. Of course, I'm not going to do that because that's not really much of a point, but it's something we could have done. And we could have done that with that, and that's the only thing I could find. I had to pretty much invent this. I'm probably going to make a tutorial on this later because this is kind of pretty cool in my opinion. But we're going to move along with the level. So, as I showed off, we can still die. You respawn as many times as you want, and it does still hits the damage bars perfectly. I actually can simulate all the stuff. Anyways, we'll go ahead and pick up the dots. So the dots are, as I said, straightforward. You run into them, you pick them up. What I'm thinking about doing with this level is actually drawing lines down to where the dots are, because I don't want players to go, because if I'm up here, for example, if I came in here, I didn't see that down there, and if I wasn't thinking about it and I grabbed that blue dot and I turned sideways, I would not think that that was actually important down here. I would have missed a blue dot and had to come all the way back through. Of course, a mini-map system, if we ever implement one, would solve that problem by itself without having to do anything elaborate. But I've read and watched so many videos on level design at this point where there's this concept that you want to build your levels to pretty much hint to the player what they're supposed to do without having any dialogue aids, without having a character point the direction, without having like fancy GUI stuff. Build a level in such a way that the level itself will tell the player where they're supposed to be. It's that kind of concept if you ever play a shooter, that if you know you're running into enemies, you're going the right direction. If you're running into bodies, you're going the wrong direction. But we go this way, we can drive around. Of course, at any point, if we hit the toxic waste, we'll take damage. The cool ideal is that I haven't made it instantly kill you. I do still need to do shield recharge though. So theoretically, you could actually do something stupid like pick this dot up and drive over here. You would lose a ton of your HP, of course. But if you wanted to skip, you could do that and you would just not have a lot of HP to go through. I'm thinking about actually almost doing time trials where you would have to get through these levels at a specific time, or there wouldn't be like any reward for it. It would just be like, hey, you beat this in like 5 seconds. I just ran over that. Another thought I was thinking about doing, but I don't really care enough for this one because this is really meant for the player. Like, this entire level is entirely meant for the player to be optionally used. It's not actually meant to teach you how to play the game. This is here to help you calibrate your controls. So, like, for example, I'm moving here, I'm moving too fast. Maybe I want to drop the sensitivity of my mouse movement. That's not something I have a feature for yet, but it's something I might want to do, where you could change your acceleration and deceleration via keyboard, or mess with your joystick, because we might add joystick support, where you can set a throttle, so you can throttle up, throttle down. Wow, that corner is really sensitive. I should add a delay on how quickly the damage happens. That way you have a second to react and pull back. But yeah, you can see the door over there. So we go back up here, move around the corner, pick up the final dot. I noted in the little short clip this would be a great point to do a camera thing. Have the camera quite literally pan down, have the door open, and pan back. It would be a great opportunity to test different script mechanics, because we do want to do some cinematic scenes in the game. I actually want to give an attempt to it, even though I know I don't really have the time for stuff like that. I still want to try it because, after all, I do want anything I build to be good. It'd be this really nice thing. Anyways, we hit our next checkpoint here. So we have another checkpoint right here. Actually, we haven't hit it yet. Let's go down here. Hit it. As soon as we hit it, set point is there. And then if we look at our tank, our respawn point is now to movement area 2, which is this little dot here. So let's go ahead and back into the game. So that gives us a respawn point. I still need to add a third respawn point because, after all, we have this little thing. I'm actually going to let this thing push me off because I haven't tested this actually pushing. It's got a kinematic body on physics, so it should be able to push me just fine. Yep, right there, push me right into the edge, and I should respawn. I do need to work on rotation, because you notice how I was still rotated when I respawned on that one. That is something I need to implement. The cool thing I actually did do is I actually did program, I switched how it actually does the teleportation. Movement is now done through the entities. This is really useful because what we can do is, if we have, say, for example, a boss or something else that we want to have teleport around, but we want, say, like 4 rotating minions to orbit him, and we want those guys to teleport with them. When we click move 2, we can have it iterate through his sub-minions and teleport those with him as well. That way we don't have to create some special code to have his minions teleport. Anyways, this is a straightforward thing. I'm not sure we're ever going to have these in the actual level. I really did make this just for the fun of it. I'm probably going to recycle this code in one of the other games I do make. We have a couple more games planned. Same thing with this guy. You're probably never going to run into like something like this. Well, you are going to have obstacles you're going to have to avoid, and we're going to put a couple more of these in here, by the way, too. Some faster moving ones. But you would have stuff you would need to avoid. Maybe like a boss's power attack, maybe a falling spire of crystal, rock landfalls. I don't know. We don't know what we're going to have in the game just yet, but that's actually kind of useful. Get to the final thing, and of course you can teleport to the next area. And we haven't got to that point yet. That's pretty much the updates and changes on that, and I'm hoping to get a lot more going, a lot more rolling, but we have a lot of the mechanics going now. This is really cool, as we have some solid stuff that I can call a game, because what I could literally do right now is I could just take what I have here and duplicate it over and make like 40 levels and just release a platformer that you have to collect dots and make it a cell phone game. I'm actually really tempted to do that just for lulz, because I need practice anyways to make games, and then 2, be a good way to test distribution, because I haven't actually distributed a game effectively yet. I have done a Windows one where you actually had an installer, but that was kind of like meh. Anyways, I'll be back here later with more content and updates.